You hear the word innovation everywhere these days, right? It's on every mission statement, in every business plan. It's become this magic word for progress. But what if I told you that for most of human history, innovation wasn't something to celebrate, it was a crime? So how did this dangerous, subversive idea become the engine of our modern world? Let's dig in.
Now, that quote, it doesn't sound like it's from some modern-day startup guru, does it? That's because it's from the political philosopher Thomas Hobbes. And spoiler alert, he was not a fan. For Hobbes and for his entire era, to innovate was to play with fire, to challenge the very stability of society. And that view sets the stage for one of the most incredible turnarounds in the history of ideas.
All right, so let's dive into that history. You have to understand, for centuries, if someone called you an innovator, it was an insult. It meant you were a troublemaker, a heretic, someone who threatened the established order of things both in government and in religion.
And this journey, this timeline, really shows you how the word's meaning just completely flipped. Way back in ancient Greece, they had a word for it, kainotimia, and it was basically a red flag for political troublemaking. Fast forward to the medieval period, and innovation was practically a synonym for heresy, a dangerous departure from religious truth. But then, something started to shift during the Enlightenment. A great inversion began. Slowly but surely, the idea was cleaned up, until by the middle of the 20th century, the transformation was complete. The innovator wasn't a villain anymore. They were the hero.
It's kind of wild to think about, right? The phrase spirit of innovation, which we throw around so positively today, was used to condemn people. It was associated with pride, with disobedience, with conspiracy. So how in the world did we get from there to here? How did this totally dangerous idea become the engine of our modern world? Well, the answer really comes down to one key thinker.
And that thinker was the economist Joseph Schumpeter. See, Schumpeter didn't just like innovation, he put it right at the very heart of his theory of capitalism. And he gave it this brilliant, powerful name that captures its dual nature.
You know, for a lot of economists, capitalism is all about balance, about equilibrium. Not for Schumpeter. For him, it was a perennial gale, a constant storm. And creative destruction is that storm. It's this nonstop process where new technologies and new companies rise up, and by their very existence, they destroy the old ways of doing things. It's this engine that's always running, always churning.
And Schumpeter got really specific about what this meant. Innovation wasn't just about shiny new gadgets. It could be a new way of manufacturing something, like the assembly line. It could be opening up a brand new market. It could be finding a new source of materials, or even just reorganizing a company. Just think about what streaming did to the DVD market, right? That is classic Schumpeter. A new good comes along and just completely reshapes an entire industry.
And this quote, this one just nails his point. What he's saying is, real, true innovation, it's not about just doing the same thing a little bit better. It's a leap. It's discontinuous. You can line up as many male coaches as you want, but you will never ever get a train. That requires a fundamental, revolutionary change.
Okay, so that raises a really deep question. If Schumpeter's creative destruction is the engine, what's the code that makes it run? What's the deep logic behind it? And believe it or not, the answer didn't come from economics. It came from biology.
Think about it. Before Darwin, if you looked at the incredible complexity of life, the only explanation seemed to be some kind of master designer. But Darwin's genius was coming up with a process, a mechanism, that could create all that amazing design without a designer. And that framework, well, it turned out to be useful for a lot more than just biology.
And it's this incredibly elegant three-step algorithm. First, you need variation. Lots of different traits, lots of different possibilities. Second, you need selection. The environment acts as a filter, favoring the traits that work and weeding out the ones that don't. And third, retention. The successful traits get passed on. Variation, selection, retention. That's it. That's the loop that creates everything.
All right, but here's the big question, the puzzle we have to solve. Biological evolution is blind, right? It's not trying to go anywhere. But when we humans innovate, it feels, well, purposeful. We have goals. We're trying to solve problems. So how can the same blind logic possibly apply to us? This is the bridge we need to cross. Well, a psychologist named Donald Campbell is the guy who really cracked this. He basically showed that our own creative thinking follows that same exact algorithm. And here's the key. Blind doesn't mean totally random. It just means you don't know for sure if an idea will work before you try it. So we generate a bunch of different ideas. That's our blind variation. Then we test them against our goal. That's selective retention. And we keep and build on the ones that actually work. It's a universal pattern for discovery.
And this is where another brilliant mind, Herbert Simon, enters the picture. He made this really sharp distinction. You've got natural science, which is all about studying the world as it is. But then you have what he called the science of the artificial, which is all about design, about imagining how things could be. And that's where innovation lives. It's the science of the possible.
What Simon did was paint a much more realistic picture of how we humans actually innovate. First off, we're not supercomputers. Our ability to think is limited. He called it bounded rationality. So because of that, we don't look for the one single perfect solution. We satisfice. We find something that's good enough to get the job done. And often, our biggest breakthroughs are really just clever new combinations of things that already exist. Simon basically put a real human being inside that abstract evolutionary model.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. We've got history, we've got Schumpeter's economics, Darwin's biology, and Simon's cognitive science, and they all merge into this really powerful modern view of innovation. And this synthesis really gave birth to a whole field, modern evolutionary economics. Thinkers like Nelson and Winter built on these ideas to connect all the dots. They showed how the little habits and routines inside a single company connect all the way up to the innovation system of an entire country. It's like a complete, full-stack model of innovation, showing how that simple three-step algorithm scales up from one person's brain to the entire global economy.
All right, so let's recap the whole journey. What are the big takeaways here? First, we saw innovation go from being a crime, a heresy, to being the hero of the story. Second, we learned from Schumpeter that the engine of capitalism is creative destruction, this constant, disruptive renewal. Third, we saw that underneath it all, innovation runs on a universal evolutionary algorithm: variation, selection, and retention. And finally, we see how this simple process plays out at every single level, from your own mind all the way up to the global economic system.
And all of this leaves us with a pretty deep and maybe slightly unsettling final question. If innovation is fundamentally an evolutionary process, blind in the sense that we can't know the outcomes in advance, what does that really mean for our ability to control our economic future? Are we actually steering this perennial gale Schumpeter talked about, or are we just along for the ride? Something to think about.